evening, and welcome to the Sound Off Show. My name is Linda Kirker. I host the program, and I thank you so much for tuning in tonight. It's actually a really good night to curl up on the couch or in your recliner with a blanket and just sit back and enjoy the show. Although, if you're inspired to call in, I hope you'll get up off the couch, and unless you have your phone right at your side. Because my guest has a very interesting topic to talk about tonight. He's not been on the program previously, but I'm glad he's here tonight. We had a little discussion a couple of weeks ago, and I was inspired to invite him on the program. So with that, I'd like to introduce my guest, Tom Murphy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And Tom is a local businessman and a resident of St. Albans. And why don't you just tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then you have a family and so forth.
Sure. I've been part of this community for about 16 years now. I came up to work for the railroad back in 1998 or 1999 with my wife Wendy and our one daughter Abigail. And since then we've had 3 other children here.
Good place to have kids.
A great place. Abigail's our oldest, she's 16, and Thomas is the youngest, he just turned 11. But you know, I tell people that it's a wonderful place to raise a family, and St. Albans has been so good to my family and myself. I don't think I could ever repay that debt that they've given to my family and myself.
Well, that's a great feeling to have about the place where you are raising your family and running a business and really feeling good about it. And St. Albans is it's a very busy and involved community, a lot of activities going on.
Yeah.
And so it is a great place.
Yeah.
And you also are, in your way, giving something back around the country.
Sure.
And that's what we're going to focus on, although you can throw anything into the mix that you want, Tom. That's the kind of show this is. But I'm just so glad and so impressed with what you and your business partner are doing.
Yeah.
Around the country. And I want all the folks at home to know about this, because I think it's critically important, and it's something that I wish we could clone you and you could just be in every state, in every community.
Sure.
So why don't you fill us in a bit? You founded Sweethearts and Heroes.
That's right.
Now, what child doesn't want to be a sweetheart or a hero?
That's right. What person doesn't want to be?
Well, that's true.
That's right. You know, you said this is some important work, and in my opinion, and I certainly don't take away from anybody else's work, but the reality is I really believe in my heart, and I'll try and not get too passionate and get too crazy.
Why
here.
not?
But there is no greater work on the planet. You know, we have 4,400 kids that make the decision to end their own lives every single year in America.
Is that right? 4,400.
And, you know, I moonlighted as a professional athlete for 10 years. I don't really like to talk about it. It was an extension of my collegiate wrestling career, and I wasn't ready to stop. And the only reason I mention that is because I've had some wonderful coaches, some world-class coaches, and some world-class training partners that have taught me some really good lessons outside of just the ring and outside of the whole sweating in the gym. They've taught me about character. They've taught me about how to treat other people. And about 7 or 8 years ago, I started to present to young student athletes some of these little lessons. And my partner, who is a school teacher in Glens Falls, New York, called me up in a panic one day, and he had seen me present several times, and a lot of energy, you know, a lot of enthusiasm. Yeah, I love going in front of kids and just showing how passionate I am about just excellence and giving your best. But he called me up in a panic about 3 years ago, and he said, hey, I got a problem. I said, all right, lay it on me. He said, well, I was supposed to have this anti-bullying speaker come in who was an Olympic speed skater, and last minute it fell through. Now, Jason had seen me present many times to kids, and he said, do you think you could do something? And I said, Yeah, because I like the challenge. You know,
Sure,
if you
sure.
said, "Hey, Tom, do a presentation on that paper cup," I would accept the challenge, and I try and get you to love paper cups. So I Googled some information, and I started to look at bullying, and I found some interesting stuff, and I kind of tied in some of the theatrics and the circus tricks that we do in our in other presentations into this one, and I went and delivered it, and it was a good presentation. There was another school there, and they said, "Hey, do you think you could do this at our school?" And I said, "I guess so. Why not?" so I realized at this moment that I got to get serious now. It's not just my buddy's school.
Right.
It's another school that's expecting something
They
of
saw
value.
value.
That's right. And they want. So I felt like I had to deliver that value.
Sure.
So if you know anything about me, I take things way too far. If you ask me to write a pamphlet, I'm going to try and write a book. It's just the way I am. So I went on this mission, this crusade, to learn everything I could about this thing called bullying. And what I really realized is what I didn't know, and what we don't know, what you don't know about bullying. Your whole life, no one has ever really even taught you what it is.
Do you know, excuse me for
Yeah.
interrupting, when I was in school, when I was a child, and even in, in middle school and high school, the word wasn't even familiar, at least not to me.
Sure.
I knew that there were some students who weren't as kind as they could be, especially young girls can be a little clicky and leave others out. But it's really become a big word,
Yeah.
a big issue. So I'm sorry
No.
to interrupt your.
No, it's great, and you're right. It has changed, but at the same time, it's the same. It's the same problem that we have been facing, one person intimidating another one repeatedly over and over again. That's smaller or weaker.
Mm-hmm.
That's the definition of the word bully. It's someone that's smaller or weaker, that's being habitually intimidated,
Mm-hmm.
and it's done on purpose. And so once I started to figure that out, that I didn't even really know what this thing was, what this animal was, I went on this mission to start to talk to people and get their bully stories from them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, I can talk to an 80-year-old, and I can talk to an 18-year-old, and I can look at any of them and say, "Tell me your bully story." And I have written down dozens and dozens of these bully stories, and everyone has one. And it may not have been you, but it may have been a friend, a cousin, a brother, a sister. And it amazed me how all of us as human beings can hold on to these social, emotional events that get locked away in our brains. We don't remember what we watched on television in the 5th grade, but we remember these single events. And some people can never let them go. And for some young kids, causes them to make decisions that they can never take back.
And then that affects how they think about things and how they act going forward.
Amen.
And so it's about trying to do your best to nip it in the bud, and to make people aware
Sure.
about how you treat someone else. Well, I always say says a lot more about you than it does about the person you're mistreating.
Sure.
Because there obviously are problems with the person who is doing the bullying. They're either threatened, or they feel insecure, or they're angry about something, or someone at home maybe, or someone else in school is bullying them, and they're, I'm not telling you anything
Yeah.
you don't know.
Well, I often tell people that the bully has the worst story. We always want to blame them. I talk to hundreds of parents, and you're there to protect your child. It's almost instinctual it is instinctual to protect your child.
Sure.
And so when I get calls and emails and letters from parents all the time, my kid's getting bullied. And I think about that, and I think about the solution and the tools we can give them, but my mind always goes to that kid that is the bully. I'll tell you a quick story. Probably about 2 years ago, I was down around New York City doing a presentation, huge auditorium, probably about 900 kids. And after it was all done, this phys ed teacher came down the aisle, and he said, I want to tell you my bully story. And I said, all right, lay it on me, brother. He said, just like you said, He said, 1979, my first year teaching. He said there was this big kid, mean. He said he used to hit kids and kick them and punch them. And he said after 2 weeks of teaching, he said I grabbed that kid by the neck, because in 1979 you were allowed to do that.
Yeah.
He said I smashed him into a chair. He said I was pointing in his face. He said there was spit flying out of my mouth. And he said I was choking him. And he said I realized what I did. And he said I let go. And the kid literally looks up at him and says, when I get home from school, my dad beats me until I go to bed. He said, when I wake up in the morning, he beats me until I go to school. And he looked up at this silly gym teacher and he said, what are you going to do to me? The hands that were supposed to love him, his father's,
Sure.
destroyed him.
Isn't it sad?
So, and it's not just, and I tell people all the time, it's not just the physical abuse. The emotional, the social can create the same void inside of that person to make them lash out, because it's the only way they know how to get attention. So there's a reason they're doing it.
To get attention, positive reinforcement and caring, but also maybe to be able to share with someone what their trauma is. I was something else I was going to add there and I forgot what it was. But these people who do the bullying are really in need of love and role models. You know, I don't, you know, it's such a big issue today. There's so much anger.
Yeah.
And, you know, the drug problem doesn't help.
Sure.
With parents who are either into alcohol or drugs, or just frustrated themselves, or were abused themselves as they were growing up and they don't really know anything different in how to relate with somebody.
If we could figure out that cocktail, we would solve a lot of problems. But it's a very tricky one, because it's not the same cocktail that's made for every child or every student.
But the feelings are the same.
Absolutely.
The feelings of feeling like nobody cares, like I'm not worthy of being treated in a healthy way.
Sure.
What that does for self-esteem, and then the anger that builds in that individual, and then it propagates itself.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, there was never a single bully that was born. They don't just hatch from eggs. They were created by anger, by frustration, by the lack of love. And the same goes with the child that gets bullied as well. You have to remember that, you know, intimidation and being smaller or weaker, and I don't mean just size, because a child can be smaller or weaker because they're just more docile, because they're not as vocal.
Very quiet.
Right, so there's a reason. I mean, we say, well, why do kids get bullied? Because they become a target of someone, because they are weaker or smaller in some fashion.
You know, I was just, as you said, everybody has a bullying story. I was thinking about myself, and in all honesty, I was always very outgoing.
Sure.
And I was not ever tiny.
Yeah.
Still am not tiny. So I don't ever remember having anything like that happen to me, but I do remember an instance when I was in elementary school where there was a young girl who, well, I'm going to say it, she smelled of urine.
Yeah.
She was a heavy-set young girl, and it wasn't pleasant, okay, to be around her. And I remember other students picking on her, and I told them, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
You know, because I wouldn't have, you know, I felt sorry for the girl.
Sure.
I didn't ever help her about the problem,
Yeah.
you know, the personal problem, but I'm grateful that I haven't experienced that. But I would say you're right on that most people have either seen someone else being bullied, or been a bully, or been bullied themselves.
Sure. I tell people all the time, the kid that gets bullied, here's the typical story. Because when we think of bullying, Linda, remember this. There's a distinct difference between getting bullied and bully behavior. Now, I have a lot of parents that come to me and say, my kid got bullied yesterday. Well, I don't obviously tell a parent, well, no, they didn't. Now, someone may have displayed bully behavior towards them, but getting bullied means it's habitual. It has to happen over and over and over and over again. It's almost, I have a good friend of mine who I present with. His name is Rick Yarish. Rick was in Iraq.
Yes, I was at your place when he spoke.
So Rick made a brilliant analogy when it comes to kids that get bullied, because really only 1 or 2% of kids in an entire class get bullied for real, where it's to the point where it's constant. It's every day, every week, every year, over and over again. And he made this. He was on a stage with me up in Saratoga, New York, big high school in Saratoga, and he just whips this out. He's like, you know what it's like? It's like someone that has PTSD. Now, Rick was blown up September 1st, 2000. He had an IED in Iraq, September 1st, 2006, lost his leg, 70% of his body burned away, his ears, his nose. Rick has no PTSD.
But he has a lot of courage.
Absolutely, a tremendous amount, more than anyone will realize. And he said, and this was brilliant, he said, you know what? Getting bullied is just like some of these guys that come back and have PTSD. Because when we think about PTSD, and I never really understood it, and Rick said, this is what it's like. You look into the mirror, and even though you see yourself, you don't see yourself anymore. You see someone else. You don't recognize yourself. And that's exactly what happens with kids that get bullied. As they grow up, every child is wonderful. Every child grows up believing in magic and wonder and what the world has to offer. But after these series of events and behaviors are perpetrated towards this child, they change. And then one day they do wake up and they realize that you don't, Sally doesn't call you dumb one day and you say, oh, I think I'll go home and take my own life. It doesn't happen like that. It happens because every day, every week, every year, Sally's calling her fat, calling her ugly, calling her stupid, making it so other kids won't play with her. And then, yes, one day she does wake up and say, I really am that person. Because she's programmed to believe it. So that's really the true danger when we talk about bullying and the traumatic effect it can have on really a small portion of our population. And that's not to say that bully behavior is any less damaging. But most of the time, when you and I that never experienced bullying, there were times when someone was mean to you. But you had that inner strength to say, and you know what? They kind of went a different direction and found someone else
because they couldn't get the reaction from you.
Right.
You're right. You're right. Not that you didn't feel a sting.
Absolutely.
When somebody criticizes you.
Absolutely.
And we all have to learn to take some, if you're in a job, in the workforce, and you're not doing something the way that you need to, you need to hear from your superior, and you have to take that. But that's a help. If you can look at it that way, it's a positive because this person is helping you to be a better employee. But when it's a abusive type of thing.
And not just that, Linda, but when we talk to kids, something else that you and I as adults, we forget almost, that there's this thing called adolescence, that as a child enters into it, we say the mean switch gets turned on in about the 5th grade. That's when it happens. Before that grade, there's some kids that are displaying some bully behavior, and what they're really doing, and I tell parents, because I have parents of kindergartners that call me up and say, my kid got bullied. And I don't say, no, they didn't. I say, well, I'll bet you that child is just going to school and just replicating behavior that they've seen at home. And eventually, it very well could turn into bullying. I forget where I was going with this, Linda.
That's all right. I have that.
I do this all the time.
I have that happen to me all the time. I understand. So, when young people are experiencing being bullied, and they're questioning their value, their worth, the value of themselves, then it would be very difficult to reach them unless you're pretty skilled at helping them to understand. The best thing I can think of is that when someone bullies you, the story is about them because they have a problem. You don't hurt other people deliberately if you're a solid person within your own self. That's the way I look
Sure.
at it.
But you remember, you're looking at it from someone that has that inner strength.
That's true.
But someone that doesn't have it. And that's where we come into play. This is what Sweethearts and Heroes is all about. Most anti-bullying organizations are awareness-based. They're education-based, and we need those.
Yes.
I've gone to those. I've received a tremendous amount of education from those presentations and that material. But we've missed the boat a little bit. We go into in our schools today in America, we hang up posters on our walls that say zero tolerance, no bully zone. And I don't want to say that's the extent of what we're doing, but 96% of the time, bullies get away with it in zero tolerance climates, right? New York State has made it against the law. So how is it possible that 96% of the time bullies get away with it? I have this great thing that I do in presentations. I take a blank sheet of paper. I can walk around to any student in the room and I can say to anyone, do you know 5 kids that get bullied in your school? 3 kids, 4 kids? Every kid can say, oh yeah, you can remember one from elementary school, okay? And I can say to them, this is anonymous. Now flip it over. Can you write down 1 or 2 kids that you think might be a bully? Every kid almost faster can say, oh yeah, I know who they are. So now follow the logic here. We have every student in our school that know who the targets and victims are, who the bullies are, yet in a zero tolerance climate, 96% of the time, bullies get away with it. How is that even possible? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, number one are the kids who know who's bullying and who's being bullied, afraid to intervene and just don't want any part of it. And the other thing I would say is, you say in New York there's an anti-bullying law, and I said to you in a previous conversation, it's not about legislation, it's about education.
Sure.
Because you cannot legislate behavior. It's not going to stop people
right.
from doing that. It has to be an appreciation for being a human being and learning. So, go ahead.
Oh gosh, I have way too many things I could say.
Oh, well, that's all right. Just
you said our kids scared, and I go into one of the things I do when I talk to teachers, and I do this in front of teachers, parents. I can go to any kid in America, any kid. There's 50 million students in America, and I can say, what do you do when you catch on fire? And in less than a second, they'll say, stop, drop, and roll. The whole room will explode.
they've learned that.
Okay.
Yep.
So we have taught 50 million students in America what to do when they potentially catch on fire and die. 135 students die between the ages of 10 and 19 in fires every year in America. Only 135. That's way too many, but 135 out of 50 million. I can go to any one of those students in America that I just asked that same question to, and I can say, what do you do when you see bullying, when you hear it, when you're part of it? And you know what they say? Tell a teacher. That's about the best they can come up with. And I can tell you this, after being with kids for the last 3.5 years, it's not socially acceptable to tell a teacher. So the majority of the time, they're never doing it. So you said this, why don't the other kids that know that it's going on do something? And there's really 2 reasons. Number one, they're afraid that they may become a target themselves, which I will tell you is largely a myth, okay? Because remember how strong you were as a child, as a teenager, as an adolescent. Just that person that's getting bullied is a target because they're weak. If you stand up and do something or say something, chances are pretty good you may get into a little scuffle or the person may give you a dirty look, but you're not that weak that they're going to target you. So I'm just telling you, it's largely a myth. But here is the key, and this is what we've figured out with Sweethearts and Heroes. Our kids, I just told you, what do they say when you say to them, what do you do when you hear bullying, when you see it, when you're part of it? They don't know what to do.
Right.
We've never taught them what to do.
How did?
We told them to tell a teacher. Well, kids aren't going to do that.
No, that's like squealing, and then you feel like you're
The
you know,
snitch.
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
word today.
Yeah,
You don't want to
snitch.
be the snitch.
Okay. I'm a few years old.
That's okay. So really, Linda, that's where we come in, and the beauty of our presentation. It's over an hour long. We give them the education. We teach them about what bullying is. We do have one little piece for kids that get bullied. I don't know what that feels like, but I've talked to enough kids that I can give them something very, very special. It's actually magical to get them to see the world a different way. Then we go into our sweethearts piece and what sweethearts really are. Then we
I
go.
want you to tell us that.
Yeah, that's a fun one. That's my favorite one.
Okay.
But then when I get to the very end of the presentation, we talk about superheroes and we talk about heroes and what it means to be a hero. And heroes have superpowers. But is that what makes someone a hero? I would say no, because the bad guys have superpowers too, right? So what makes someone a hero is their willingness to do things that other people aren't willing to do. That's what makes someone a superhero. And it's really tough to help that child that smells like urine. It's really hard. It's awkward, right? That kid that feels weird. But we never have told our students that they have the right and the responsibility to intervene and help. And then we give them specific tools. We say it's as easy as the ABCs.
Oh, I read that, and I wanted to know about the ABCs. Go ahead.
So where do you want to start? You want to start with the sweethearts or ABCs?
Your choice.
Okay, well, I'll tell you about sweethearts first.
Okay.
I told you 4,400 students make the decision to take their own lives every year in America. My partner in Glens Falls, the year or two after we started this, they lost 3 kids in their school.
Wow.
3 kids in their school. And one of them was on my partner's wrestling team.
Oh.
He knew the young man. And I say to people all the time, 4,400 kids take their own lives every year in America. And a lot of people will fire back and they'll say, oh yeah, but they're not all bullied. And I say, okay, I'll agree with you. The kid on the young man on my partner's wrestling team, Jason doesn't really believe he was bullied either. Nobody certainly was nice to him, but there's a common thread that all of these 4,400 kids have. There's a common thread that binds them all together.
Okay.
And that's the lack of these things that we call sweethearts and heroes in their lives. He didn't have anybody, I don't want to say that didn't really care, because I'm sure his parents cared about him, but he didn't have people in his life that were there to help pick him up.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that we teach kids, that it's their responsibility. And we teach them about what a real sweetheart is.
Would that be? Are you saying that it would be a peer?
Could be
one of your peers.
This is the way you're gonna love this.
Okay.
So, when we look at the epistemology of the word bully, the origin of it, we say, where did this crazy word come from?
Oh,
and don't tell anybody yet.
No, I won't.
I told Linda this earlier. This will blow people's minds. People that are watching are going to be like, what? When I say this in a classroom, you should hear the murmurs and the rumbling that roll through the crowd when I say this to a bunch of middle schoolers. About 40 years after Christopher Columbus discovered America, the word bully was invented. That's where it came. That's the origin of the word. And it originally meant sweethearts. And now you'll never forget the name of this, because people always say to me, Hearts and Heroes, what's the name of the organization? And once I tell them this, they never forget. So the word bully originally meant sweethearts. And then somewhere in the 17th century, about 1680 or so, it was literally perverted, because pimps would bully Johns for their sweethearts, for their girls. And that's where we get the modern definition, harasser of the week. What Jason and I have done is we have gone back and resurrected this 16th century bully, this good fellow. And who are these people? Linda, if I asked you right now to think back, you would not be here in this seat right now if there were not 3 or 4 or 5, maybe more people in your life that when you were down and out, they were there to help you up. When you didn't want to push yourself academically, they were there to push you. They bullied you the right way. They made you a better person. And give me the first name of one of your 16th century bullies.
Diane.
Diane. If Diane, can you imagine a life or a world without Diane?
No.
No, you can't. And that's one of the beauties of what we do. We teach kids, number one, surround yourself with 16th century bullies. Surround yourself with them and you will win the game of life. You will win the game and be successful. And then step number two is become a bully. And I'll tell you, can I say the H word on television?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bully the hell out of people. And if it wasn't for my buddy Jason in college, he bullied me ruthlessly on the wrestling mat. And now today, he bullies me just as bad, the 6 inches between my ears. He tries to make me better every single chance he gets. And I do the same to him.
That type of the sweetheart
Yeah.
bully is somebody who inspires you, who supports you.
Amen.
Who loves you and cares about you.
That's right.
And wants you to see you be the best you can be and to be happy and content and all of those good things. And so, yes, we all need those people in our lives.
That's right.
And when you are widowed, like I am, or anyone who's living alone or doesn't have a significant other, that becomes, that becomes your either other family members or
Sure.
friends who, and it's a blessing.
Amen.
It's a real, real blessing.
And it's when I talk to kids, I say, I use this good little analogy. I say, a doctor said you will only be as healthy as your 5 closest friends. So if your buddies are running home and jumping on the couch and eating chips and drinking soda, that is the pattern of health that your life will take. And I tell adults, an economist said, you will only be as wealthy as your 5 closest friends. Think about the people you're hanging around with. Are you just going and having beers with them? Are they that motivated in making themselves better and making you better and working hard? And I also tell kids that a coach said you'll only be as competitive as your 5 closest teammates. If you're going to practice and screwing around, come game day, that's how competitive you're going to be.
Yeah.
And the famed
It's your mindset.
Amen. The famed philosopher Aristotle said the same thing. He said, we are what we repeatedly do. And I would tell this to all your guests. I would say, think about who you're surrounding yourself with. Think about those people. Are you surrounding yourself with people that are making you better, faster, stronger, more intellectual, are sending you books to read? That's what we do if we really want to succeed in life.
Absolutely. And one quick interlude here,
Yeah.
folks. The phone number is 527-6449. Oops, there it is.
Uh-oh, we're going to have
Ask-
people call? I hope not. I get so
Oh,
nervous.
come on. Oh, you can talk in front of a...
Yeah.
Come on. No, so folks, if you have any comments or questions about this topic or something related, feel free to chime in. We're going to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's... I think I mentioned this to you before. I told my kids and my 2 grandsons that I felt a little badly saying this, but I said you have to be selective in the people that you spend your time with.
Yeah.
And at one point, one of them was involved with a group that, they weren't really bad, but they were doing some things that maybe weren't the wisest. And one of the boys said to me, well, that's what all my friends are doing. And I said, somebody needs to be a leader. Somebody needs to set the tone.
Sure.
And that's you.
We had a good example.
Well, we only come this way once.
That's right.
And it's very, very troubling to me that there are so many people who aren't enjoying who they are and focused on being the best they can be and being good to others and being motivated in life, and it's hard to motivate someone else.
Yeah.
That kind of has to come from within, but when you give people an opportunity to hear and to watch and to express,
Yeah,
then that can be a motivator.
that's right.
So, okay, we talked about sweethearts and heroes a little bit. Now, the other thing you were going to talk about, which escaped me right now.
The ABCs.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I got that right here.
You know, when I get to the end of our presentation, there's a couple critical things that I think I should say here that I also say to kids. And I lay this incredible roadbed on education and giving things to kids that get bullied. We talk about sweethearts. We talk about actually jumping into action. That's one of our things. Because we can always say we're going to help someone, but the reality is that peers intervene less than 10% of the time. I'll say it again, peers intervene less than 10% of the time. But when a hero, when a peer, we say when a hero intervenes, within 10 seconds, there's a magic window called the moment that we've nicknamed the moment. I do a pretty cool poem about the moment.
Oh, you do?
That's how I end the presentation.
Okay.
So when a hero jumps into action within 10 seconds, it's successful over 60% of the time. The trick is getting kids to jump into action. And
Is that what the A is? Action?
No.
Okay.
I'll get there.
All right.
You're getting anxious, Linda.
I am.
So it really comes down to what Albert Einstein said. I mean, Einstein figured this out way before we did, but Einstein said this world is a dangerous place to live, not because of evil people. And the first time I heard that, I thought, well, this guy isn't too smart. Of course it's a dangerous place because of evil people. But this is where Einstein's genius was. He said this world is a dangerous place to live, not because of evil people, but because of those that choose to do nothing about it. So when I look out at my crowd of kids, when I look across the table at you, Linda, when I look at the cameraman, you know what I say who the problem is in America? It's you. It's me. It's the cameraman. It's all of those kids who have chosen not to do anything about it. Because I'll give them the tools. I'll give them the tools to jump into action and to become someone's hero. I'll do that. But so we give them these ABCs. I'm going to give you a very shortened, abridged version because remember, like I said, we spend a lot of time with kids. There's a lot of role playing.
Okay.
But so when I talk to people, say, well, how do you teach kids to do this? And how do you help a kid that's been bullied his whole life? I'll tell you the one way. And we want to, as parents, as teachers, as administrators, we want to fix the problem. We want to stop it. We want to give these kids a discussion. We want to sit down and talk about the reason for life and not doing these things and how you're going to hurt someone, and let's fix this and talk about these emotions and these feelings. The kid that's getting bullied, he doesn't need that.
No.
Eventually, we hope we break through that ceiling. But the reality is when it's going down, when this behavior is happening, when this kid's being humiliated, you know what he needs? He needs an immediate fix.
Intervention.
And that's where A comes in. And A just stands for away, which means that if I see someone getting bullied, I have how many seconds to jump into action? 10 seconds. After that, the game changes. Feelings are hurt. It's escalated to a point where you can't get involved. It's over. You got to get them away. And it's as simple as this. If I see you getting bullied, because every day these girls jump you in lunch and they make fun of you because you smell, because your hair's a mess. They didn't realize that your mom is a drug addict and you put yourself on the school bus every day since the 3rd grade and you made your own lunch and you walk home after school because your mom's too screwed up. They don't know that.
Yep.
They just know that you act a little weird. It's about me recognizing that and going up and saying, when just before it's going to happen or right when it happens, it's about me going up to you and saying, Linda, can you show me where Mrs. Jones's room is? Can you help me with this math problem? And just get
Take
you
them away.
And then you know what? When I walk away, nobody even needs to hear this. I look at you and I put my hand on your shoulder and I say, oh, Linda, I love those earrings. And if I'm the most popular girl in school, when I turn away, you're going to smile so big you're going to rip your face.
Yeah.
Because all you, oh my God, she noticed me.
Yeah.
All you want to do is be noticed.
Acknowledgement, reinforcement.
That's right.
Yeah.
So getting them away, or we say helping them avoid the situation. either getting them away or helping them avoid the situation. And that's what a superhero does. A superhero goes out of his or her way to get them away. That's A.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to it, but in a nutshell, that's the one thing that we do.
Okay.
Okay, B, I already kind of gave it to you when I put my hand on your shoulder and I whispered in your ear. But B, we just call it being a buddy. Being there for the other person.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in school, I was a jock. When I say these
You're
next...
a big guy. You didn't get...
When I say these next words, don't take it the way it's going to sound. I was a coward. And I was not a coward in the sense that I was afraid. I was a coward where I wasn't going to help that kid that everybody made fun of. I was a coward. I was afraid to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a ton of examples and ways that we do this. But it's about, even after the kid gets bullied and you saw it in gym class, what about going up to him afterwards and saying, hey, Joey, I saw what happened to you today. That kid's a jerk to everybody. Because Joey thinks he's the problem.
Yeah.
He believes that he's the problem.
Yeah.
So that constant reinforcement, I have some beautiful emails or messages from kids that say, after I saw your presentation, I went out of my way to help these kids. Just to show them.
Yeah, you gave them, what's the word I want? A path.
Path.
You gave them the motivation. Actually, they learned something that they have a role to play, and you gave them permission, kind of.
Amen.
And a reason why they should step up.
Yeah.
Good.
That's B. Become their buddy.
Okay, I got it. And C.
C's a tough one, but it's kind of that we call it confront the situation. Now, there are times we may have to get in between two people, and we always say that's the last resort. But confronting the situation, we can do in 100 ways. From the one that we talked about, going and telling a teacher, a parent. I say, start with an older brother or older sister if you have one. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes they'll have been through it before, or they can intervene or step in. Mm-hmm. But confronting the situation, one thing that we don't think about is bullies have friends. And a lot of the time, we have a lot of friends that are bullies. And we say, well, yeah, I guess I do have a friend that's mean to someone. And he's not mean to me, but he picks on this one person. So what's wrong with, or maybe he's not your friend or she's not your friend. Maybe it's your neighbor and you guys grew up next to each other and you're cool. There's no problem between the two of you. But what's wrong with going to that person in private so they don't feel threatened and confronting it, saying, hey, I saw what you did to Billy today, and he's really, I don't think you understand Billy's life. His father took his own life. I'm telling you real stories of kids that I've really talked to. Yeah. His father took his own life, and I realize he's a little different. He's a little strange sometimes even, but you got to leave him alone. Oh, come on, Tom, I'm just joking around. No, you're not, and it's really affecting him. So we call it confronting the situation. Yeah. And there's 100 ways to do it. And we give the kids these skills, we role play, we let them try it, we make them feel awkward so that when it happens for real, they'll at least know that it's going to feel a little different when they do it. But really, it's about empowering them, it's about making them understand that this problem does not change and has never changed because the people that we've been addressing this problem with, the bullies and the victims, we're not going to fix that. It's been around since the beginning of humankind. Men and women have intimidated other men and women. What we need to do, and I'll tell you this, our program works from the 5th grade all the way to, get ready for this one, the Miami Dolphins football team. Ooh. So that's a pretty big assertion on my part. So we had this issue that happened last year on the Miami Dolphins football team. I don't know if you're a football fan, but there was a guy on the team that quit because he was being bullied by another player. And he quit the team. And it made all kinds of news, ESPN. I could go into that locker room tomorrow and I could say how many of you knew that this guy was bullying this other guy. And I guarantee you that 90% or more of the other players knew that that was going on.
Sure.
But how many of them did something about it? If 10 of them got together, there's about 60 people on a professional team, something like that. If 10 of them got together, if 20 of them got together and confronted this guy, not threatened him, but confronted him and said, hey, we're here to play football. This is not happening. I guarantee you it would have stopped.
It makes you wonder why. I mean, what is so fearful about confronting a bully unless you think you're going to be bullied?
We never have been told that we have the right to do that.
But when one person is being threatened or hurt, isn't it a natural instinct?
I think for some people it is. For other people it's, I'm not going to get involved in that.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you're not gonna, who is? That's what I would say.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do it where you punch the bully's lights out. You don't have to get in between these two people. And that's I think that's what Hollywood has painted in our minds, that we got to go save this bully. We don't have to do that. We have to find this kid after he was bullied and show him that we care.
And not only this, we touched on this before, Tom, but it's not only the bullied that needs help.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the bully who needs a lot of help.
That's a tough nut to crack there.
Yeah.
Remember, how do you affect that kid? There's a wonderful story of a father in a community, very popular, did a lot of things in the community that he was involved in, and his son was getting bullied ruthlessly by this kid. Most of us would jump out of our skin and want to choke the other kid, just furious, call the school, call the other parents.
What did you do, befriend him?
He befriended him. And then he helped the kid get into college, and he made the kid part of his life, and what he realized was the kid had no one. I had a teacher in the Adirondacks I presented to years ago, and I loved the way she said it. She said, oh yeah, those are just homeless kids with parents. That's what she called them, homeless kids with parents. She's like, these are the kids that don't want to go to school, but when they get there, they don't want to leave.
Right.
Because it's the only thing that makes sense in their life.
There's a comfort level.
That's right.
And a feeling of belonging and,
Yeah.
and the things that we all need. There's certain things we all need as human beings.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to switch here a little bit and ask you and I, when we had coffee a few weeks ago, you mentioned something about goal setting.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you want to go into that at all, but something that you talk with the young people about setting goals in life and how the path to achieving goals.
How much time do I have? A few minutes.
About 10 minutes.
So I started speaking, like I said, to kids, not about bullying. I started speaking to kids about motivation, leadership, goal setting. So like I said, I've had some good coaches, and that's what it comes down to. And anyone out there, if you're really serious about a goal, there's an Olympian. You can look him up. His name is Milt Campbell, and Milt Campbell was an Olympian, I think, in the 50s in the decathlon, 10 events. And there's a great story about Milt Campbell going to the Olympic Training Center, and he goes in front of 200 potential Olympians. These are some of the best athletes in the country. And he says to them, how many of you have goals? And of course, everybody puts their hands up. They want to be an Olympian. They want to be a champion. And he says to them, how many of you have your goals written down? And about half of them went like this. And so Milt Campbell's arm is still in the air. And then he says to these people that still have their hand in the air, he said, how many of you have your goals with you right now? And whose hand was the only one left standing?
Wow.
Milt Campbell's. And I can keep mine in the air because I keep my goals right here. And every time, I have 4 kids, so I open my wallet a lot. Every time I open my wallet, I look at them. And Harvard University did a groundbreaking study years ago where they took MBA students. These are the brightest minds in the world. And they asked them the same thing. They said, how many of you have goals? And they found that only about 15% of them actually had goals. And then they said, well, how many of you have them written down? And only about 3% had them written down.
Wow.
And 10 years later, they went back. And that 3% that had goals, had them written down and looked at them, made 10 times more than the other 97%. These are Harvard students. They were all making six figures, 10 times more.
Wow.
So I tell people, if we talk about goal setting, number one, you got to get your goals written down. You got to look at them all of the time. And here's, I carry a whole box of grease pens, dry erase pens in my trunk with all my superhero gear. And I give them to people and I say, listen, and I give them kind of a goal thing like this, and I give it to them. I say, this is my gift to you. I say, go home, write them on your bathroom mirror, your goals. Because it's the first place you'll look in the morning, it's the last place you'll look at night, and you'll see them. But there's a formula for goal setting, and I like to use the SMART formula, which means it has to be specific, right? You can't say, oh, I want to be able to run a marathon. Well, that's a terrible goal. It has to be specific. I want to run the Boston Marathon, all right? It has to be measurable. And how long do you want to run it? 3.5 hours, okay? Specific, measurable. It has to be realistic. You know, it's got to be, you know, for someone your age, for someone your weight, whatever. It just has to be a realistic goal.
Or you won't get there.
That's right. And then really the last part is it has to be time bound. It has to be time bound. You have to say, I want to be able to run the Boston Marathon in 3 hours on July 15th or whenever it is. That's what you have to do if you really want to accomplish anything. That's what I do, is I have my goals. I just got done my first quarter goals. If you go in my office, they're right there on the wall, and I look at them every single day.
To check.
You can check them out. And so that's goal setting. And for anybody out there, there's a little golden nugget for you. And
I'm a list maker.
That's okay.
I've been doing that, and I check it off or cross it off.
So you're doing the same thing.
I get things done.
But you got to start putting dates next to them. I got to have this one done by this date, by this date. If you want to, you know.
Yeah, these are more immediate things.
Sure.
And like Tuesday, and then.
Okay, so you're doing that. You're doing that.
When it comes to the longer term goals, I don't think I used to be better at it.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I'll give you a grease pen sometime.
Okay. Now, tell me where you and what's his first name?
Jason.
Jason.
Jason, yeah.
You've been to areas all over New England, or?
Yeah, mostly New England. I tell people that to date we've been in front of almost 1 million students. We've been in front of almost 1 million students to date, which is blows my mind, because I did it over the last 3.5 years on my vacation time, you know, working, and now I'm dedicating myself to it full time. I'm writing a book right now.
Great.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's going to take about a year to get done.
There's a goal.
It is, and I've got a great story about that.
Okay.
So I'm down in Texas presenting. One of my good friends lives down there. And we're watching these DVDs. He's bullying me. There's Brendan Bouchard stuff. We're getting better, you know, making ourselves better. That's what we did on the weekend. We sat in front of a TV for 20 hours over 2 days, watched this stuff to make us better. And I said, I'm going to write this book. And he said, no, you're not. I said, yes, I am. He said, no, you're not. And I said, yes, I am. And I was getting kind of irritated. And he goes, all right. He goes, give me a check for $500 right now. And I said,
I'll give it back to you when the book's written.
Well, I said, you're crazy. And he said, I told you weren't going to write the book. He called me. He got me good. So I pulled out a check and wrote him a $500 check. So April the 12th, I have to have the draft done and edited.
Oh, boy.
The book won't be done, but the draft has to be done and edited, or he cashes the $500. That's a good one, huh?
That is a good one.
Yeah.
That's a friend.
Oh, he's a bully. He's a bully.
Well, yes, a bully.
A 16th century bully.
Yes. Hero.
Yeah. Oh, he I don't know how much of a hero he is. He's one of my sweethearts. But so anyway, if you want to get a hold of us, it's easy. It's sweetheartsandandheroes.org or .com is the website. My email address is simple. It's just Tom, T-O-M, at sweetheartsandandheroes.com. Not .org, .com for my email address. And I tell people everyone knows someone in California, Colorado, and everybody has someone they know whose child is going through an issue like this. Reach out to us. I'll go anywhere, anytime to help this kid if we can make it happen. So that's the story.
Well, if you do you have other schools lined up right now?
Oh yeah, I mean almost half of February's lined up. Most of March is already lined up. So, you know,
Wow.
we'll be looking at next year pretty soon.
Well, God bless you for
Yeah.
doing that, because, you know, you feed yourself. We were talking about this before the program. You feed yourself in a way when you reach out and do good for others, it makes you feel good about yourself.
That's right.
And so it's a win-win situation for those who are listening and learning,
Yeah.
and for you who are, you know, trying to be a benefit to people's lives.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that a lot of young people have listened and learned and benefited and are trying to make life better for others and for themselves.
Just surround yourself with those sweethearts. Surround yourself with people that are going to bully the heck out of you.
I'm very blessed that way.
Good.
Yeah, I really am. I try to be a good friend myself, and hope I am. So we're down to the last few minutes. Again, it's Tom at sweetheartsandheroes.com. That's
right.
your
Email address.
email. Okay.
And then the website, there's a ton of info on the website, some videos, and that's at sweetheartsandheroes.com or .org, because it is a full-blown 501c3. So, which means that Jason and I pay for just about everything.
So, how's he doing?
Oh, great. I mean, the neat thing about Jason is he's in the laboratory. I mean, he's in the classroom for the last 17 years, and he gets to try some of these neat techniques.
Oh, sure.
He calls me up all the time, all excited, and he says, "Oh, let me tell you what I just did to this one kid today." Great stuff.
I bet he's loving that.
Yeah.
And I'll bet you that the young people are really, you know, loving that.
Yeah.
It's to be a teacher. Well, I feel like in a way, many of us are teachers, even if we're not technically in the classroom. If you have a good philosophy
That's
about
right.
life and you care about people,
That's right.
you have opportunities along the way. You're doing it in a massive way. I do it in little ways.
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
But you know, you're blessed
I sure am.
to be able to do this, and your children, I believe, are blessed to have a parent who understands these things. And
I don't know. I don't think they like me very much. That's what they tell me anyway.
well, yeah, but that's part of being
I know.
a child, you know. But when push comes to shove, you
Yeah.
know, it's a different story. Of course they like. They don't like you, they love you.
That's right.
Well, Tom, thank you so much.
Oh, it's my
for
pleasure. Thank you.
all you do and for sharing with the folks here. There are a lot of parents and grandparents. You know, I'm told quite a few people watch the program, so hopefully, you know, they learned a lot
Sure. I hope
of
so.
value tonight too, and I sure did. And I'm going to be watching
Okay.
as people do things
Good.
and seeing how that goes. So, anything parting comment you want?
Oh, just thank you for all that you do. You know, I know you've been doing this show for 9 years, and that means you've been helping a lot of people. So
Well, I
you're
hope
one of
so.
those people that have made the choice to jump into action and to do the right thing. So thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. I do the best I can. So I think we're about done, folks, for tonight. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great week ahead. Stay nice and warm in this cold weather, and I'll see you next week. Good night. I think we should be clear.